Welcome to Financing Philadelphia's Future. My name is Peter Winslow. I'm your host today, filling in for Vanessa Lowe, who can't be with us. We have some housekeeping suggestions for you. The first is that you set your screen to speaker view, which is the icon at the upper right-hand corner of your screen. And that will give you the best view of the events to take place. As you know, this is a fast-paced half-hour conversation with our guest. Today, that will be Kendra Brooks. Please enter your questions in the chat, and we will try to get as many questions as possible into the conversation. And if you are not already a member of the Philadelphia Public Banking Coalition or would like to be part of the forum that receives information about the activities of the coalition, please enter your email in the chat and we will get in touch with you. So we move forward quickly, and I'd like to begin and very pleased to welcome our council member, Kendra Brooks. And Kendra, if you will say hi and introduce yourself.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Peter, and the Financing Philadelphia's Future team for having me today. My name is Kendra Brooks. I'm a city council member here in the city of Philadelphia. I was elected in 2019 under the Working Families Party, making me the first ever third party elected in 70 years in the city. I entered politics through education, activism, and advocacy. And it just opened my eyes to all the problems or issues that were arising in my community amongst my neighbors and neighborhoods like mine. And that kind of pushed my interest into politics. And now here I am ending my first term in city council and actually running for my second.
Thank you so much, Kendra. Kendra, we know that one of the measures that you have entered into City Council for consideration as legislation is the creation of a Philadelphia wealth tax, which would be 0.4% of intangible assets owned by individuals in Philadelphia. Could you describe for us what that legislation is and why you think this is a good idea for Philadelphia?
Sure. So when I introduced the Philly Wealth Tax, it was because I believe that everyone should pay their fair share, because that's how we're going to get the city that we all deserve. So for years, the ultra rich, like Jeffrey Yass, has found clever ways to avoid paying taxes. And, until we continue to push policies like that for, the ultra rich to pay what they owe, our schools, our children, and our communities will continue to suffer. And my bill would have taxed certain privately held stocks and bonds at the amount you said, 0.004 or 0.4%, which is like $4 on $1,000. Because, most ultra rich people hold their money or their wealth in the stock market. And this bill is one of the most effective ways that we could raise money for and the communities that need it the most. So it didn't pass, but it did expand the conversation about what is possible. And I'll continue to explore ways for us to move this needle forward for a more equitable tax structure. So, to make sure the ultra rich pay their fair share, so we all can have the city that we deserve.
If you're reelected, do you intend to reintroduce this bill either in its original form or in a modified form?
Well, I was a part of this coalition from the beginning, and I think we need to talk through what it would look like with a reintroduction for us to get it actually passed and implemented within the next term.
You were instrumental in putting together and promoting the People's Platform. I'm wondering if you are reelected, whether there are planks within that platform that you would go to as well.
Yeah, so I'm a part of, we created that People's Platform back in 2019. And based on the work that coalition is currently doing, and from my experience in being in office now, we have created something called pathways for Philadelphia families, and we should be rolling those out over the next couple of weeks. It's 5 different conversations based on 5 different pillars that actually came from the original plan from the platform for working families. It's a focus on children and youth. It's a focus on the economy that we all deserve. It's a focus on housing. It's a focus on greener, safer neighborhoods. And there's a focus on safety and healthcare. So you should be looking forward to that. It should be coming out pretty soon.
Well, all of those issues are concerns that have been addressed by the coalition, and that are to be really influenced and helped by the Philadelphia Public Financial Authority. You were very instrumental. You voted for and you sponsored and you promoted the ordinance to create the Philadelphia Public Financial Authority. That's been sort of stymied right now by Mayor Kenny. In a new administration, do you see opportunities for the financial authority to move forward?
I mean, I'm an organizer, so I always see opportunities that we can move things forward. I think as we continue to look at the public banking coalition and working together, we can find a way to move closer to a fully functional public bank in the city. And together we can figure out what those obstacles look like, or if there are any obstacles with our new mayoral administration on the horizon. But I'm committed to supporting this effort every step of the way.
Thank you. We do appreciate all of the help that you've provided in the past, the help and leadership that you've provided in the past, and look forward to that in the future as well. Along those lines, there's been a lot of discussion within the coalition about housing issues, and I know that housing issues are very important to you. Frankly, I don't even know where to begin with all this. Would you put forward legislation for eviction diversion during the pandemic, and you've had experience yourself with sheriff's sale and problems with eviction. Maybe you can talk a little bit about those issues.
Sure. So, I've made housing a core part of my agenda because I feel like no family can live or thrive without stable housing. So, I fought for affordable housing protections for renters and families that can focus on these matters. So what we were able to do in this first term was pass the Renters Access Act, which prohibited discrimination in the rental application process, and it supports the fair access to housing, creating a uniform screening criteria for applicants with rental and credit history. And we took on the lead of reforming our eviction system after a tenant was shot. So we're still working on the landlord tenant office. It's something that's still moving forward, working with the courts on that. We co-sponsored Emergency Housing Protection Act, which kept Philadelphians housed during the COVID-19 pandemic, and established a nationally recognized eviction diversion program that helped reduce evictions in Philadelphia by 75%. And we would love to make that a permanent department in the city of Philadelphia because it's a temporary right now. And we introduced a resolution calling for hearings on rent control in Philadelphia, which is something that I ran on. And we held rallies and public hearings calling for rent stabilization, as a necessary remedy for Philadelphians that are facing the housing crisis. And we advocated for and won increased funding for the rental assistance program, actually $15 million, and also the expansion of eviction diversion program and the right to counsel. We won $1 million for right to counsel in targeted zip codes. So yeah, housing was something that I ran on and will continue to focus on over the next 4 years, because until, families have stable housing, we'll continue to see some of the problems that we see in our city. And that's why we have to continue to fight for those who need and deserve stable housing in Philadelphia.
One of the issues involving with housing stability is tangled titles, and we've discussed that in this forum on some occasions. Do you think that there are some programs or ways that we can move forward to cut through that Gorgon knot of tangled titles and make it easier for people to stay within their homes?
That's something that we're currently looking through to make sure that, once we identify a tangled title, is making sure that families have access and funding to the legal resources that they need to move it forward. So that's going to continue to be a focus because, like you said, that is a major issue, but it gets caught up in the legal system because a lot of the families that are found that are found in this issue also don't have the finances to be able to afford legal representation. So we're going to continue to fight and support families that are going through this here in the city.
On this issue?
You're on mute.
Yeah, Susan, you're on mute, or?
Sorry, I've got noise here. Nothing else in the chat, Peter.
Okay, let's move to something else along the lines of thinking about housing and land use in general. We have been very supportive of land trusts, community land trusts, and the various ways in which they can be used for housing, for development of commercial centers, and for community gardens. I know community gardens are one of the subjects that is of particular interest to you. How do you see land trusts as being a tool and the kit of the city for addressing multiple problems?
I think with the land trust, that means we have the ability to utilize the land that's in our possession to not just beautify neighborhoods, but to provide affordable, accessible housing. I think as we, continue to determine the distribution of land in the city, we need to make sure its access to community is available. And that's why we moved on protecting these community gardens. I mean, I supported the idea of a public bank because I found it was a way for the city in general, to be able to provide a varied amount of resources for individuals in the city, whether it's support for low income and affordable housing, whether it's support for minority businesses. So I think it offers us the opportunity to be able to reshape how we think about financing what Philadelphia looks like and making sure that it's more democratic, less exploitive, and that is an equitable system. And I think that a public bank is a way to get there. And I think we have to continue to push the envelope around this conversation.
Thank you. Susan, I noticed that there are some questions in the chat that relate back to the wealth tax. I'm wondering if you could summarize some of those questions and see what Kendra responds to.
Let's see. We've got a question from Deb about when would the wealth tax start kicking in? For instance, the first 50,000 or whatever be exempt. She's asking because the average household is $50,000 to $75,000 in wealth. That's and even less for Black. So where would that wealth? Your idea of a wealth tax? When would that kick in?
Well, keep in mind, it did not pass. It started the conversation. Right. I think right now we were fighting a uniformity clause. So that's kind of where we're trying to figure out, like, who is considered ultra rich and where does that come? But I think the version of our bill that we first tried to pass, it was over like $500,000.
Yeah. Okay. And 401ks.
So there were certain investment opportunities that primarily working people invest in that were working to be exempted from that.
Okay.
Kendra, would investment in city bonds and city obligations be exempt as well?
I think those are the things we were working with some of the union.
Let's move to something else along the lines of thinking about housing and land use in general. We have been very supportive of land trusts, community land trusts and the various ways in which they can be used for housing, for development of commercial centers, and for community gardens. I know community gardens are one of the subjects that is of particular interest to you. How do you see land trusts as being a tool and the kit of the city for addressing multiple problems?
I think with the land trust, that means we have the ability to utilize the land that's in our possession to not just beautify neighborhoods, but to provide affordable, accessible housing. I think as we, continue to determine the distribution of land in the city, we need to make sure it's access to community is available. And that's why we moved on protecting these community gardens, because we realized that these community gardens were sold to developers, were being sold to developers without the public having the ability to stop it because of an agreement that the city had with the U.S. Bank. And once we were able to buy back those liens from U.S. Bank, now that land is properly in the city's possession, and it's our ability to be able to give it back to communities for them to continue to work on that. And that was huge because we so many communities around the city. We highlighted the communities in North and West Philadelphia, but there are communities around the city that have been tending to land that was being sold off to the highest bidder. And there's still some parcels that we're looking to continue to look at, which are some lots that folks also, side lots that people were tending to throughout the city. And we realized that when the city is the owner and the controller of the land, we have the ability to return it back to community. And back to community is not just community members, but also, some of the developers that do low income affordable housing and provide access to the housing that we talk about in all our legislation. And in order for our city to continue to grow and for us to protect existing residents, we have to make sure that we're investing in the least of us. And when I say that, I mean the folks that have an income that's less than 30% AMI. And currently a lot of the housing stock that's being sold throughout the city and being developed on starts at 50% or more AMI. And sometimes that even includes for folks that work for the city. So by the city being the owner through the land trust, we're able to get that land into the hands of folks that are able to build low income, accessible housing for all Philadelphians. And that's something we're going to continue to push through. We had a victory with community gardens, but we need to continue to push for more because our housing in Philadelphia the prices are going up and up, and the average Philadelphian are finding themselves unable to purchase and rent within the city limits.
So, how would this be a strategy to counter displacement and gentrification?
I mean, in order for part of it is we don't have enough affordable housing in the city. And if the city is not in control or in partnership with organizations that are willing and able to build low income affordable housing, then we don't have control on who's on the land that we are distributing to folks. So I think that we have to continue to work with folks that are willing to build for Philadelphians to be able to afford. And I think that's going to be an ongoing process.
And do you think a cooperative model would be helpful?
I mean, I think we can't take any model off the table. I think we have to try multiple ways because, our housing, we're in a housing crisis in Philadelphia, and once property is already in the hands of private developers, we can't determine what the rent rates are going to be for those folks. So the way we can get to that is making sure that if we're developing, workforce housing or low income affordable housing for Philadelphians. And I think it has to be an ongoing conversation, and there's going to be multiple ways for us to not just finance it, but for us to, make that happen. And cooperatives is definitely a part of the conversation.
Okay.
Peter, there's a follow-up from Connie on the sale of land trust. Is the sale of community land trust under the control of the district council persons exclusively?
No, the community land trust is a separate entity, even though the community council, the district council person does have some say in that. The land is under the community land trust, belongs to the city of Philadelphia.
Okay.
Kendra, I'd like to go back, if I could, to one of the concerns that we have here at the coalition, having to do with with bringing our money home and creating avenues for different institutions to direct their investments into local projects. The question has to do with your feelings about our city pension funds, working with the coalition and others to direct some funds into what we've been talking about, low-income housing in particular.
I mean, I think that's a nuanced conversation that we have to have all the folks at the table. I think that we are at a time where we need to make sure that we are investing in our city. We're seeing corporations come and make major investments in the city and have been willing to push Philadelphians out. In order for us to be in control of what happens in our city, it's important that we also be the investors in that. And I think that that's part of a larger conversation on how we handle the pension fund and, how we apply that to projects that we want to work on here in the city.
And that would be something that you would support in council?
Yeah, I'm always open to have conversations with folks about how can we improve the quality of life for all Philadelphians, whether it's, whether you work for the city or you don't. I think we need to make sure that investments here in our city are made by folks that live, work, and love Philadelphia. And I think that's why it's important that we invest in housing in that way. It's important that we invest in minority business development in that way, because all of these are investments in our city. And how can we help develop, stability for our city is by making those investments, whether it's from our young people through our adults. So whether we're talking about housing, or if we're talking about education, we're talking about parks and rec, we're talking about small minority business development, all of those things help grow, help communities grow and thrive. And until we make those deep investments, we'll continue to see our city in the state that it's in. And I think that we can't take any conversation off the table. And I think, that moving forward, how we invest in our pension funds is important as well.
You're talking about the support for minority-owned small business, and earlier this month, you supported the resolution 230590 for the National Minority Business Development Agency, and a series of events around that that are going to be taking place coming up at the beginning of October. Those events are very helpful, but do you see ways that the city, through the Public Financial Authority and otherwise, might be able to support small minority-owned businesses?
I mean, the city currently does support minorities, small-owned businesses. That's why MedWeek is so significant here. Last year, I had the opportunity to participate and attend maybe a session or two in the opening ceremony, and I was able to connect with multiple minority-owned businesses throughout the city, and also connect small business or entrepreneurs that are looking to expand to the information, to the resources, and to the opportunities that were available to these minority business communities. And I think we have to continue to promote and support this minority business development agencies in order for us to continue to do programs like the Philadelphia MedWeek. And that's why I was proud to support it last year, and will continue to support. My children are entrepreneurs, so I understand the importance of investing in community businesses and young entrepreneurs, because they're the ones that's going to help develop the next generation of leaders for our city. And those investments need to be made.
So, along those lines, in supporting minority-owned businesses, we have three minority depository institutions in Philadelphia. Would you be in favor of qualifying some of those institutions as qualified city depositories?
I mean, I wouldn't be against it. I'm not really sure of the questioning. I think that, all things are up for discussion.
Okay. We're are concerned that that Mayor Kenny doesn't understand the rationale behind the financial authority, with the assumption that other organizations like PIDC can fulfill those functions, even though they are really not grassroots and stakeholder oriented organizations. Do you think that we could better support small businesses with additional institutions such as the financial authority?
I mean, I think yes, PIDC does support small businesses, and they do support for affordable housing as well. But with the public banks, that gives us the opportunity to be in control of our own funding. And we've seen this happen in other entities around the country. And I think we should definitely introduce a public bank as a pilot to be able to help support these small businesses, affordable housing, and all the things that we're talking about, because we've seen it work in other areas.
Thank you. We do appreciate that support. Let me see. I'm just to shift a little bit. One of the things that has been impressive about the Bank of North Dakota, which is the only public bank currently in existence, has been their program for student loans. I know you have history with the Community College of Philadelphia, and with having been involved with student loans as a single mom, as a recipient for your own education. And I'm wondering if you would be supportive of a program similar to that to help Philadelphia people of all ages and stations in being able to get higher education.
I think the reality is that I've been a leader, in the national movement calling to cancel all student loan debt. And we need to reimagine higher education as a public good, not just a commodity that's accessible to the elite. I went through Community College of Philadelphia. I had to work my way all the way through to get an MBA and ended up with debt. And my story is not unusual to many others. So, of course, I will continue to advocate locally for the expansion of the Cato Scholarship, which currently offers free tuition at my alma mater, CCP, and for expanded pathways for young people and just Philadelphians to have access to debt-free apprenticeships and higher education, because we realize that is an entity of workforce development. And when people are able to work and make money, they're able to live and thrive. And we need to offer opportunities for our young people to thrive. And I do feel that debt-free education or higher education and access to higher education as a public good is a pathway to get us there.
That's wonderful. And I think we all agree, with you as far as that's concerned. Is there any other issue that you think would be significant for the coalition to focus on or to be aware of that's part of your platform or things that you're working on?
I think just overall, we talked about so many different issues. And I just realized, in every budget cycles, I work with my colleagues to deliver investments in resources that keep families safe and happy and healthy. And I believe we have to make sure we continue to fund our public libraries and parks and recreation centers and their programs. We need to make sure that we have clean, green streets. So we need to make sure not only that they're just clean, but we also have to have, green space for young people and just tree canopies in communities to, as energy efficient and to keep our areas cooler. We have to make sure that we are paving our roads and improving streetlights. And I'm really excited about the alleyway program that the streets department is working on, where they're cleaning alleyways and lighting alleyways, which is important because it's a quality of life issue. And we need to continue to just make sure our kids have access to the arts and after school programming, protecting workers, funding mobile crisis units, and just public health centers in general. And I think for me, we just need to make sure that we're investing in people. And the only way we can do that is by not giving out handouts to the wealthy. And this is what my second term will focus on, and what my current track record has proven, that I support making sure that we are creating communities that are healthy, safe, and productive.
Thank you so much, Councilmember Brooks. This half-hour conversation always goes by very, very quickly, and our time is up, so we'll have to end it here. Thank you all for participating, and we look forward to your joining us for the next edition of Financing Philadelphia's Future, which will be on October 31st. And until then, stay safe, stay healthy and happy, and we'll see you then. Bye-bye. Okay.